Hello. Wasn't expecting you. Tell you what. Give me just a second. That's better. One shower and a shave later, a little change of clothes, and like a fresh new man. Welcome back to the Arts Department, everyone. I'm Autumn Rain Turkel. This video is a long time coming because I got sick. So this is the continuation of the sometimes occasional, whenever we have time podcast with Daniel Landerman and I. We call it the DL on Arts, and it's a discussion or meanders around about the things that interest us, the subjects at hand. This time we're talking about being true to yourself as an artist and appeal to the masses. Before I get too in-depth, I'm going to let us take it away, and I'll see you in a little bit afterwards.
I love storytelling. I know you love storytelling, whether that's writing or showing stories. And there's just something about that I find a lot more immersive and allows the viewer to use their imagination, and so like I like to create that stuff. It's hard for me, especially if I'm doing traditional, to want to go, say, the more conceptual route, something you might find in a gallery, because you're not really going to find illustration, like straight up illustration in the gallery.
Right.
Even though stylistically there might be no difference in the way they're painted. Right. You get plenty of illustrators that their paint handling is easily more than good enough to be sitting in a gallery, right. But gallery goers tend to not care so much about dragons and whatnot.
Which is weird, because if, you get the stuff that you could do to not distort, but to tell a story with a dragon, smoke and fire and swirls of magic, and it all kind of, it looks like fine art,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And realistically, it's how to describe it, like, for however long, the last probably 40 years on the gallery side, they've cared more about like depicting the human condition, right? Like, right. What it means and how shitty it is to be human. The pain of being human, and there's no reason that let's say a fantasy-based painting couldn't tackle those same things, but they're just not going to see it that way.
True.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, just the idea of the fantasy genre, that escape from everyday life, is a commentary on its own.
Yeah.
On the human condition.
Yeah. It's interesting because writing is accepted, maybe not as literature again, right? But fantasy writing is accepted as portraying through a secondary story the human condition. It's basically, everything is supposed to be an analog for our world in one way or another. Writers will sit down and write about subjugated races and in their fantasy worlds and that sort of thing, and it's supposed to make you reflect on the life around you. So why not the same with art, right?
I don't know why. And it's always bothered me. That it wasn't viewed that way. I mean, let's take the Western genre, which is huge in the US and even actually across the world. Even in Europe, they love Western stuff. Westerns, cowboys, right? Yeah. When we're talking about the Old West. And it's a huge thing. And I mean, we have the Masters of the West show that happens at the Gene Autry Museum every year here, and it's a big deal, and those paintings sell for a ton of money.
And they're beautiful.
They are. They're literally making shit up. Like they're painting scenes that do not exist anymore. Yeah. And they're romanticizing the hell out of them.
Right.
And so how is that any different than a fantasy painting at the end of the day.
Yeah. Making shit up, romanticizing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's just that people view that and they see it as historical. Right. And again, so you could take mythology, right, and do paintings around that.
Yeah.
And people would view it as like legit for a gallery setting.
Which is interesting because if you look at the roots of fantasy and the genre as a whole, it's really rooted in more of a modern mythology. Right. So you're talking about Eastern and Western European civilization and culture at a certain time.
A lot of it's rooted in folklore.
Right, the folklore of it. But folklore is just mythology, right?
Yeah.
So,
but as you say, it does tend to be a little more modern mythology.
Right.
Is what we call folklore. Yeah. And when it gets old enough, it probably becomes mythology.
But I mean, you're talking the difference of what? 1,000 years, 2,000 years.
In some cases, less maybe.
Right. So the how old a story is determines its worth as an artistic artistic. What's the word I'm looking for?
Endeavor.
Theme.
Yeah. So when we're talking about the fantasy genre generally being unaccepted as high art. Right. And going back to elevating, in my case, like, elevating my personal art as much as I can. It sort of brings in two things that we were talking about previously. One, the idea of broad appeal, which I think anyone who illustrates, who does commercial work, struggles with a lot, right? And because it's always kind of creeping in, like, how many people like my stuff? We want everyone to like what we do, and we have to kind of push that out of our minds. I think some people generally gravitate toward a look that has very broad appeal. Yeah. You look at the stuff that's really popular on social media, and there's some that are just purely skill based, right? Where people are just like, how it's like magic. Everyone's like, how the hell does Kim Jong-ji do that? Right. We know it's just sheer practice and willpower. Right. But to the average viewer, it's like, it is magic. But then you have other artists where they tend to like have a more stylized approach that is clearly Disney informed, right? Yeah. And there's a reason that Disney has developed the looks that they have, because it is based around appeal. That's like one of their keywords that they throw out all the time to their artists is it appealing? Right. Is it appealing? Is it? And it's so like, that's such an amorphous kind of word. Like, what does that even mean? Yeah. You're like, I like it. It's appealing to me.
I dig it. I like it.
Right. But do I like it, and do 12-year-old girls like it? Yeah. I don't know. Like, and do 60-year-old people like? I don't know. Yeah. So, but I think to consciously be chasing that appeal outside of work is doing ourselves a disservice, right? Because unless it's where we naturally gravitate toward, I think that's going away from whatever our natural artistic voices might be. Right. And I think it's important to follow that, because when it comes to whatever genre we're painting in, I think the only way to kind of give it that respect that it probably deserves, and it's not to say that everyone will see it that way, but the only way to do that is to really do it with conviction, right? And I think if we're going away from whatever our natural voice is, I don't think that we can do it with conviction, because we're just pretending.
Right.
Then, right?
That's interesting, because I was watching Alfie. Alfie? He's got a Alfie YouTube channel, right? Painter guy.
Oh, that I.
No, don't know.
I was thinking the stupid movie.
Oh,
Alfie.
no. It's I don't know. I'm
sorry. Some people might really like the movie, but I can't say this.
Way to alienate people, Daniel. We're like, fuck this video. I'm done with this stupid podcast. Yeah. So I was watching Alfie. Anyway, he's a painter. He's got a YouTube channel, and more recently he had posted one where he was doing a portrait and talking about painting specifically for social media, right? So you're talking about artists that aren't as lucky as we are to have a career in art and then be able to do art for pleasure on the side. Yeah. Their career is the entire thing.
Yeah.
Right? So social media is their career, essentially.
Yeah. That is certainly a very different scenario, because I'm sure we would both be approaching art in a pretty different way if we were freelance.
That's what I was thinking. And because we've had this discussion around catering to social media for years. Yeah. I stopped posting on social media because I didn't want to cater. I was like, I don't want to be told what is hot, how to post it, when to post it, why to post it, and all that
especially when they keep changing that, when it's a moving target. Yeah. Right? When we think back to the earlier days of Instagram, algorithm paradigm shift. Yeah. They were very open about, like, we don't censor art. Right. Then, they get sold to Facebook and it all goes to shit. They technically don't censor art, but
you get shadow banned.
And no, but that doesn't exist. According to them, except that all of a sudden, like for me, for instance, I can't use hashtags. If I use hashtags, my stuff will not show up. But it still treats it as being dispersed to the hashtags, right? So when Instagram basically sends your post to the first 10% of your followers, the most active 10% of your followers, then based on their engagement, that determines the speed with which it disperses to the rest of your followers, right? Yeah, it's super stupid. But if you use hashtags, it gets divvied up between your followers and the hashtags. So then it doesn't actually go out to the first 10% of your followers. So if I use hashtags, I get a fraction of the engagement on my stuff because it goes out to those hashtags but will not show up in the hashtags.
What?
Yeah. It's really fucking annoying. It's like, I can't tell you how frustrating that is. And
I can fix my fucking posts now. No hashtags.
And so that's why in the last, whatever it is now, 3-4 years on Instagram, the only growth I've seen is losing 10,000 followers.
You're losing more than I've ever had.
No, seriously, I remember at the early in 2018, I was at 128,000 followers. I'm at 118,000 now.
And you're doing all those things that they say that you're supposed to do, right?
To a degree.
So you're doing reels, you're doing stories.
Only a little bit, not as much as you're technically supposed to. I'm gonna start giving it a shot, but because you don't have to actually do a whole lot, you can post a reel every 4 days or something. Okay. And because they're still pushing those hard. Okay. So that can give you some growth. I would just say, don't use hashtags, because if there's anything that they deem as potentially sexual content, even if it's not actually, if it's just alluding to that, they'll be like, oh, shadow ban.
Okay.
So
That's see, but this is where we're getting into this the appeal thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is it really appeal, or is it curated content for the masses?
Oh, hey, hi. I just wanted to interrupt real quick and say, do all of the things on the social media, like ring the bells and all of this stuff. And I recommend checking out Daniel's Patreon, among other things. If you look down in the About section, you can find all of our links. And there's tons of stuff to choose from. There's resources for artists. There's prints. There's stickers. There's T-shirts. There's all kinds of fun stuff. So check it out down there and do us a favor and help us grow the communities and all of that stuff. Ring the bells, like, subscribe, whatever you got to do. You know all the things. It's rote by now. Thanks for all of that, and back to the discussion. Here we go.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's two-sided. I mean, I have seen some artists that have, a big following that do very kind of broad appeal stuff, but it's their natural inclination, and
right.
They have a massive following. I have seen some of those sort of venture into a little bit more kind of not safe for work type stuff. Not going hardcore. They're not, again, it's not sexualized stuff, but people that never used to do nudity and anything that maybe do a little bit here and there, and I don't know if they've seen an effect. I do feel like across the board, at least on the art side, there's been a decline in engagement.
Yeah.
For a lot of them, and for others, no. I mean, there's some people that have fantastic engagement on their work, that have like less than half the following that I have, and have 4 times the engagement.
So that begs the question then: is it the medium of Instagram, or is it the fans in general? Because if you look like let's go back to writers.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at some writers that let's say tried to self-publish, their fan engagement is not high. They don't have the same type of fan support that say someone like, I don't know, Brandon Sanderson has.
Who? Yeah, didn't he do some kind of like Kickstarter thing?
Maybe,
He was trying that self-publishing.
Yeah,
thing,
I heard he was going to do a little
like
self-publishing. Probably won't succeed.
He was trying. He was like trying self-publishing.
Yeah, branching out.
Yeah.
But so he has a fan base that is
rabid fan base.
Ravenous. They will buy everything he does, right?
Yeah.
And they do that because of his engagement.
Yeah.
He said that he travels 111, or prior to COVID, traveled 111 days a year. Right? So there is a connection there.
I mean, in a sense, in theory, I'm like, okay, that's like only a third of the year. That's not that bad. But if you consider he was probably literally spending 2 days in each place, that's a shit ton of travel.
It's a lot of travel. So his engagement brings about their engagement, and his delivery of quality content brings about their engagement, right? So he's always delivering his top tier, and he's very transparent about his workflow, his process, where he's at in the next book, and so on. Except for
that's partly the teacher in him coming out, right? Like really wanting to share that process and kind of demystify some of it, probably in the hopes that more people will write books. Will venture into it. Right. If you can demystify some of that stuff, then people start to see like, wait, maybe I can.
Right. Maybe
I thought you just had an idea in your head and you sat down and started at the beginning and ended at the end of the book and you're done.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to do that.
Well, he definitely brings a lot to the equation.
Yeah. I start in the upper left on a painting and just finish in the bottom right.
But and if you were left-handed, you'd start in the upper right and move to the bottom left.
Yeah. That's how paintings work. If you can't do that, you're screwed.
It's not how paintings work, folks. Don't listen to him. He's taking the piss. Don't listen to him. I think that the engagement thing, so you're with Instagram in particular, I feel like it's always chasing the dragon with that thing, because you're constantly trying to get that engagement, and to do that you have to curate your content and curate even the way that it's presented to get those eyes on. Yeah. Right? So there's...
Yeah. I mean, you can still... There's a lot of stuff you can post on Instagram. And the reality is, you don't have to use hashtags. Again, a couple of the artists that I've seen that have insanely high engagement have never once used hashtags. Like, I don't know how they did it.
Word of mouth.
What's his name? Zine Chin? I think. Like, I remember when I first found his work, he had, I want to say less, I think he had around 80,000 followers, and would just get insanely high likes and comments. And that was, I think I found his work a few years ago. I want to say sometime in 2020. And now I think he's got, I don't know, 250,000 followers.
So the question
never uses hashtags.
The question is how much of that is just having base appeal, right?
Yeah. Like, I mean,
I know
there's
for a fact,
clearly an audience.
I know for a fact that my stuff does not have broad appeal.
Right, and I mean, that's something that I've had to kind of, in a sense, come to terms with my own stuff. And I think when my account had first kind of exploded, I think it was almost accidental, in that I was pushing videos, and I didn't know that Instagram really just pushed whatever their newest features were.
Right.
And the 1 minute video was fairly new at the time.
Right.
And I was just posting 1 minute videos like crazy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so it was, I think there was a certain amount where it was kind of accidental.
Right. A little bit of luck in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's something that I had to learn, where it really is more about engagement and less about your followers, right? A lot of, if you're looking for sponsors and stuff, sure, they all just look at that followers number.
Right.
A lot of them have grown more savvy and do look at the engagement.
Right. Because you can buy
that's
followers.
More important.
Don't buy followers.
Yeah, you can buy followers. I never have. A couple people, when I've brought up my issues with Instagram, a couple people are like, well, yeah, that's what happens when you buy followers. I'm like, dude, I've never fucking bought followers. Like, it was all organic growth.
Somebody bought followers for me.
They can do that?
Yeah.
They can buy them for you?
I believe so, because at one point I went from, I want to say 1,500 to 5,000 people within a very short amount of time. And I was like, oh, well, somebody must have posted my stuff on a big account or something like that.
Or something just happened to get on the Explore page. That's what happened when mine first blew up. I was like, what the hell is going? My phone was just blowing up. I'm like, what is going on? It took me a week to find out. And it wasn't until someone told me later.
Oh, okay.
About a week later, they're like, hey, congrats on the Explore page. I'm like, oh, that, because I could not figure it out. I'm like, literally, I went from, I had, at the time, I remember, because I'd taken a screenshot, I was like, yeah, 6,666 followers. And then in a week, I had 13,000 followers. And I was like, what? And it was just a stupid throwaway video. Like, it was on a Sunday. Yeah, it was on a Sunday. I was like, oh, I haven't posted something today, and I'm about to head over to girlfriend's place for dinner, so I'm just going to do something really quick. And it was just like, it wasn't even fully toned. It was literally just like a pencil drawing. And it just like...
I think in my instance, it was the way that I figured out that it was some kind of weird fake thing was I started looking at all of those followers.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to say 75% of them didn't have profile pictures.
Chloe 00728.
Yeah, where I was like, that is clearly fake. So I took one night and I just went through. It took probably 4 hours of deleting people out of my followers, and I was back down to like 1,200 people. And okay, that seems a little bit more reasonable. But I have hardly grown since then.
Yeah.
So I feel like somehow in getting whatever that instance was of growth, it's like basically just stamped down any hope of me growing, because I got put on some kind of shadow ban list.
Yeah, and I think it is something when we talk about broad appeal. I don't actually think it does. I don't want to say it doesn't do any more for your artistic career, but I guess it depends on what you're looking for from it, right?
Yeah, I think depending on what your career is,
and what
that
you want
kind of growth
it to be,
could be very important.
Yeah, and but I think like in our cases, because they're slightly different, obviously, like we gravitate towards slightly different things. We like, of course, a lot of the same things, but maybe approach them differently, and all that. But I think like we want to paint things that we love to paint, right?
Sure.
And sure, that may shift over time. Like our aesthetics will change, as I mentioned before, and I mean, hopefully they'll grow and change, right? Otherwise, we're not really growing as artists if our sense of aesthetics are, if they don't elevate, essentially, right? Our kind of awareness of whether it's color play or line quality or shape design or mark making or all of that stuff over time is going to elevate, right?
Yeah.
And I think like again it kind of comes back to doing whatever we do and doing it with conviction, and credibility. It's a similar thing. You're seeing it in the acting world, right? It used to be that actors trained to be able to actually act and take on any kind of role that they were presented with.
Yeah.
Then it kind of became this sort of niche thing where no, you stay in your lane, act what you know. That way you can do it with authenticity and do it well, right? And that's what you're seeing. That's why you see so many actors. They're always doing the same kind of roles, and we think of it as typecast, but it's usually very conscious on their end. They're like, no, this is who I am. This is what I relate to, and so they don't have to go out too far into their imagination, right? And you can see, because obviously the acting world has exploded, right? There, who knows how many movies and TV shows and all high quality and insane amounts of roles available, right? Same with the art world. It has exploded in the last 15 years with the internet. It has we see how much art there is. There are artists that are, for all intents and purposes, no-name artists producing really awesome stuff.
Yeah. And
they're just sitting at home, freelance, trying to get work,
right,
and just creating illustration after illustration after illustration. So there's so much out there that, we're not going to come up with anything new. It may be something we haven't seen. New to
you.
Yeah.
I always say that. It's new to me.
Yeah. But I mean, you just go on ArtStation and you can see awesome illustration after awesome illustration after awesome illustration, and you wonder what is this for? And it's this is just my personal project that kind of it's probably never going to go anywhere, and I'm super guilty of that.
Sure.
Because we have an awesome idea and we put it down. So I feel like it's more important to stay true to what we love and what we know. In a way, obviously, like hopefully we're all pushing ourselves and learning new things so that what we know increases, right?
Right. Growth mindset.
Yeah.
Growth.
But
that's something
you see
that
a lot
came
of
from
writers.
work
You
that
see a
I'm
lot
like,
of writers fall into the trap of thinking they can just make anything up, right? In the fantasy and sci-fi genre, right? And what happens is you start getting a very two-dimensional representation of a world or of characters because they're just going too far outside of what they actually know and what they can actually represent with conviction.
Right.
You know, and because it is easy in writing to sort of fall back on like, oh, well, the, you know, suspension of disbelief and the reader will just fill in the you know, so like they can just, in sci-fi, they'll just make up all kinds of like stupid technology that really could never exist. But then you have other writers that research the shit out of it and do, you know, that hard sci-fi that is based in science.
Like The Expanse.
Right. And I mean, and you can, you know, just point at the eternal battle between Star Wars and Star Trek. Right?
Yeah.
Star Wars is literally just making shit up.
Yeah.
It's swords and sorcery. It's fantasy.
Right.
It just happens to be in space with spaceships.
Right.
You know, that somehow bank in zero-G environments. I don't know how, but they do. Versus Star Trek, which was originally based in science, you know, theoretical science.
Right.
But there were still theories, some of which they have not proven, but they haven't disproven either.
Right.
Yet.
Right.
You know, and so,
some of which they actually have developed technology around.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we are going to alienate people in a Star Wars versus Star Trek conversation.
I'm not saying,
there's always going to be somebody that's like,
I'm not saying one is better than the other.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that
there's differences.
That while Star Wars is dressed up as a science fiction,
right?
We know like it's a space opera, right?
Yeah.
It's fantasy.
Right. It has magic.
They have light swords. It has magic. It has monsters.
Yeah.
You know, dragons pretty much living on asteroids.
Right.
And you know, like it's swords and sorcery.
Right.
And that's fine. You know. Of course, then he tried to apply like fake science to it and just fucked it all up. But you know,
I don't know if you read what he wanted to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting.
Well, I'm referring to the prequels.
Well, I'm talking about the wills.
Fake science.
The wills. So there's this whole,
Oh, you're talking about later, like after.
Well,
the original trilogy.
Well, no, I'm talking about what midi-chlorians were supposed to be, what the wills were or are in the Star Wars universe, how they're actually these other beings that are tapping into a different universe. I think I'm getting this right. This is all from reading it once. Tapping into the universe and using the wills to control midi-chlorians, which in turn is the Force, and it's this big overarching thing where they have a agenda, and it's a story within a story kind of thing. And it was an interesting, as far as like sci-fi goes, it was kind of cool. But
I think I've never seen him handle that kind of like intricate political maneuvering, so I'm not convinced that he would have been able to do it. That shit's not easy. You know, like reading, a huge inspiration to me, which I had to then kind of pull back on, knowing that I was not going to be willing to do the research to pull off something like that, were the Bourne books, the Jason Bourne, the books that Robert Ludlum wrote, were so well done. And the political maneuvering that he writes is so well done, but he also had a contact like in the CIA
that
could.
Wait, you don't have a CIA contact that you can But I'm sure they got this place bugged. So, hey, can somebody contact Daniel? He needs to write.
Well, and so then supposedly the guy who picked up the Bourne series after Ludlum passed away, supposedly he also had a contact in the CIA, but I read the first book of his, and it wasn't nearly as like involved and engaging and giving you chills because you feel like the shit's probably happening.
Yeah.
And we aren't aware of it, you know?
Yeah. Well, so this goes back then to presenting that quality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Presenting that there's a level of finish, a level of expertise that people are attracted to,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to achieve that is to... No, I don't want to say the only way, but one way to achieve that is to continue to smash your head against a growth mindset.
Yeah.
To continue to think, how do I better myself in a way that has broad appeal, not just personal appeal.
Yeah.
And how do I get to the point where I'm getting that same kind of feedback on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah.
So that it really does beg the question, though, is what is the purpose of all of that? What's the push?
Okay, that's where we're going to cut it for now. I'm already working on the next one. I've begun the editing process. It's kind of arduous, but I'm here for you. So definitely check out the next one. Ring the bell, like I said earlier, to get notified when I post it up. And, hey, keep it down out there. I'm trying to record a video in here. What was I saying? Oh, they're just so loud. What am I gonna do? I don't know. Anyway, yeah. Hey, thanks for hanging out. We'll see you next time, and let us know down below your thoughts, and we'll get back to you. That's it from the arts department. Keep drawing. We'll see you next time. Where's the thing? Come on.